The Biden administration has released a $25,000 first-time home buyer grant that they are trying to get passed into law. Now, if this is something that gets fully enacted, it could affect and help a lot of you. So today, we are going to talk through some of the criteria that is being proposed currently for this grant and how you can apply. I'm Nicole Nark, Arkansas real estate broker, and welcome back to my channel with videos to help you find your way home. So this is not the first grant program or incentive for first-time homebuyers the Biden administration has proposed since running for office and being elected. So let's talk through what has changed compared to some of the past proposals. The proposed $15,000 tax credit for first-time homebuyers has recently been scrapped. This is something that it does not look like the administration is currently going to be proposing or pushing forward anymore. However, this has been replaced with the Down Payment Toward Equity Act of 2021. Now, with this, there are very strict criteria that have been announced that come with this proposal. Now, this is something that differs greatly from that $15,000 tax credit that me and several others were informing you guys about through our videos earlier this year. So first, let's talk through who is eligible for these funds. The first criteria that you have to meet in order to be eligible for this is you have to be a first-time home buyer. Now, a first-time home buyer, by definition, is someone who has not owned a home in the past 3 years. So even if you bought a home and owned it over 3 years ago, if you have not had a deed in your name for the past 3 years, you can be considered a first-time home buyer again. So you have to not only be a first-time home buyer, you also have to be a first-generation home buyer. So this means that your parents never owned a home, or maybe your parents owned a home and they lost it due to foreclosure, or they were forced to short sale and they have not bought a home since. And this also applies to anyone who was in the foster care system. You would also be considered a first generation home buyer. Now, in my opinion, this in and of itself is probably going to be the factor that makes a lot of people not eligible for this specific proposal right now. In addition to meeting these two criteria, it is important to note that there are income limits as well. So you must make at or below 120% of the area's median income. We've talked about this before, and this is actually a little bit higher than a lot of other first-time home buyer and down payment assistance programs. A lot of those are you must make less than 50% or 80%. So the fact that this is 120% of the area's median income is actually pretty good. Now, of course, there are exceptions for our high cost areas. If you are in somewhere like New York City, San Francisco, the areas that are deemed high cost would have different qualifying criteria, and you could make up to 180% of the average median income in those areas and still be able to qualify. So these three criteria here: first-time home buyers, first-generation home buyers, and making at or below essentially 120% of the area's median income. These are the qualifiers, all three, that you have to meet in order to be eligible for $20,000 of that $25,000 first-time home buyer program. So you may be thinking, Nicole, where's the other $5,000? Let me tell you. The remaining $5,000 is specifically set aside for socially or economically disadvantaged individuals. So let's talk about the definition of what that means from the proposal. I have pulled this verbiage directly from the proposal, and it says, the act defines socially disadvantaged individuals as those who have been subjected to racial or ethnic prejudice or cultural bias because of their identity as a member of a group without regard to their individual qualities. An economically disadvantaged individual is one who meets the bill's income requirements. So to further explain on that, they go into a little bit more detail in the proposal and say any individual identifying as Black, Hispanic, Asian American, Native American, or any combination thereof will be presumed to meet this definition. Any individual who does not identify as such will have to prove by a preponderance of evidence that they are socially disadvantaged. So this is a little bit confusing, and I've already seen conflicting information on this on the internet. So remember, in order to qualify for the bulk of this proposed grant money, you'd have to be first-time home buyer, a first-generation home buyer, and make no more than 120% of the average median income in the area. Those are just the three main criteria for the $20,000. Now that remaining $5,000 would only be applicable to the socially and economically disadvantaged individuals who I have outlined in this description right here from the Act. So now that we know whether you may or may not qualify for these proposed funds, let's talk about how the Biden administration is anticipating they will be able to be used. These funds can be used for down payment assistance, which is awesome. That will help alleviate the big obstacle to home ownership, which is saving for down payment for a lot of people. In addition to that, closing costs assistance can be included, as well as buying down your interest rate. So you can use these potential funds if you have some left over from covering that down payment and closing costs to put that towards buying down that interest rate and getting yourself a better deal for the life of your loan. Now, the really big thing that I'm excited about is that these funds through this program can be combined with funds from other state, government, local, nonprofit, private company programs. So in the event that you are already using another form of down payment assistance, according to this act, it sounds like these proposed funds from the government would be able to be used in conjunction with other programs. And that is something that I don't see very often, so it is worth noting. So let's talk about how to apply. Of course, like I mentioned, this is just currently a proposal. So hang tight. This has not been passed into law. There is nothing that you can apply for or take advantage of right now. Now, how the Biden administration has planned to fully execute this, if passed into law, is that they will make these funds available at the time of purchase. And this is something that they had talked about with their tax credit plan for $15,000 as well. But according to everything that I've read, it seems like this program is going to be kind of a replacement for that $15,000 tax credit that was originally proposed. In addition to all of this, funds are expected to be dispersed through state agencies. You guys know how I feel about state agencies. It's going to be one of those things where it's kind of like getting down payment assistance from someone who is working at the DMV counter. This could cause issues for you if you're planning on using this, because state agencies, although they can provide a lot of great services, are known for not always being super prompt and timely when it comes to offering assistance and just going through their processes. So just take this program with a grain of salt and know that it would obviously be great to take advantage of the free money that you can get if you qualify for it, but you will probably need to give yourself extra time when buying a house. And sellers may be a little hesitant to accept your offer if they know you're using this, if they have other offers on the table that they think could close quicker. The last thing that I also want to talk about is that through this act, the Biden administration has clarified that this is going to be grant money. So if you've seen any of my other down payment assistance videos or anything like that, grant money means that it can be forgiven. So they're saying that you would have to live in the property that you buy with these funds for 5 years in order for this grant money that they give you to be completely forgiven and for you not to have to pay it back. So although this grant for first-time homebuyers differs dramatically from what a lot of us were anticipating the first-time homebuyer tax credit would be, it's important to realize why this is the case. After decades of governmental discrimination, this grant is proposed in order to help bridge some of the generational wealth gap that was caused by the government's discriminatory lending for decades prior to this. The wealth building aspect of real estate largely comes from home ownership. And due to the fact that many groups of people have been banned from or strongly discouraged from home ownership, has become a problem. So it is through these eligibility requirements that the Biden administration is trying to set up a grant to specifically offer assistance to some of those people. Now, of course, this is not as open as the tax credit seemed when it was proposed. So if you do not meet these eligibility requirements, don't get discouraged. There are tons of other down payment assistance programs, closing cost programs, and different all-encompassing first-time homebuyer programs out there that are available to you. As you've heard me say before, all of these programs and grants have specific and differing criteria. So just because you do not get approved or you're not eligible for one specific one does not mean that you can't find assistance elsewhere. I have made a video specifically covering different types of down payment assistance and where to find the programs available in your area. So I will link that above now so you can check that one out. And if you are interested in learning more about how different Biden administration proposals could affect you as a first-time homebuyer, make sure to check out my video on the credit score changes that this administration is trying to put into play. This could have a huge effect on how your credit score is reported and could make it possibly go up or down depending on how on top of certain payments you have been. I will see you in the next video.